So what up guys, my name is Pete and you're watching P Life. So new car to the channel, we got this 718 Spyder that I picked up. It's a 2021 model. Had it for about 1,000 miles now, so I'm going to give you guys my overall impressions, talk a little bit about the spec of the car. We are going to go for a spin, and I'm going to tell you about 5 things I like and don't like about the 718 Spyder. So I'm probably the last guy to review this car. Obviously, I'm not an automotive journalist. I like to give you guys impressions, in seat time as an owner, particularly comparisons to other Porsches or other sports cars or vehicles that I've had. So hopefully you guys enjoy this. So the 718 Spyder is actually based off of the mid-engine platform. This particular model is actually the first mid-engine convertible that has come from Porsche's motorsports division. So what does that mean? That means that it has the same naturally aspirated 4-liter flat 6 that makes 414 horsepower, 309 pound-feet of torque with the manual transmission. It actually has the entire front end from the 991.2 GT3. It's got a trick suspension in the rear, and it has unique styling compared to the Boxster model. So you can see that the back has this beautiful double bubble design. The car, for weight savings, has a manual rooftop. It still actually weighs quite a bit more than the Boxster, and that's simply because the suspension components on this car are really heavy because they're built to withstand track abuse. So overall, the car is like 3,100 pounds to 3,200 pounds and change depending on how you specify it. In this particular situation, I opted for the lightest spec, so I went with manual transmission. I went with carbon ceramic brakes. I went with carbon fiber lightweight bucket seats. A couple other bits and bobs, nothing too crazy. So let's go for a cruise. All right, so welcome to the inside of the 718 Spyder. So we're going to start with 5 things that I really love about this car. The first one being the looks. So I'm not a convertible guy. This is actually the first convertible that I've ever owned. Personally, I feel like the rear ends of convertibles look more bulbous and a little bit less shapely than the slick coupe design. But for some reason, this car with the flying buttresses and I guess the proportion of the window to the rest of the car with the rear humps is very attractive to me. I think it's one of the best looking cars that Porsche currently make. It's possibly one of the best looking cars that they've ever made. And to be honest, I was eyeballing GT4s until one of my other buddies got a 718 Spyder, and I saw it in real life, and it was game over for me. This car was amazing. The second thing I like about this car is the handling. It's a really good driver's car. It's basically the same car as the 718 GT4. As I mentioned earlier, it has the full front clip from the 991.2 GT3. And it has a fully adjustable suspension, so you can lower and raise the suspension height, and then camber, tow, all that stuff is adjustable. There is one limitation. It appears that you can't really get more than 1.5 degrees camber in the back if you want to have a little bit of tow. So you can remedy that with some aftermarket suspension parts. But overall, the actual suspension geometry and capability is very good on this car. Another reason why the handling is so sweet is because it's very light. Low 3000s is kind of what people are tipping the scales at. You don't really see cars that light these days, and so that's amazing. Also, the car is mid-engine. You can see the engine. I don't know if you can see it in this angle, but the firewall is literally behind the bucket seat, and that provides a lot of balance to the car. I think the car has like 45% of the weight on the front axle and 55%, so a little bit of extra weight in the back, which is actually very welcome because the car actually has a good amount of torque. And the steering feel is sensational. I believe they broke the Guinness Book of World Records with the 718 Spyder in the slalom. few months ago. Where you going, lady? All right. And overall, the handling is one of the big draws to the 718 Spyder and GT4, which are kind of the top dogs of the 718 range. And that is until the GT4 RS is released later this summer. The third thing I like about this car is the engine. Alright, so this is a honking 4-liter naturally aspirated engine, revs to 8,000 RPM, you know, very, very linear with respect to its power delivery. It has gobs of torque. Basically, as soon as you put your foot down, you know, the car will instantaneously, I mean, it's almost like a Tesla, the way that you have instant torque response, and that was one of the first things I noticed when I drove my friend's GT4. And that's, you know, 4,500, 5,000 RPM. Very, very responsive throttle and very, very usable power in the mid-range, which was one of the criticisms of the 981 GT4. But, you know, people have been modding those cars to be very, very powerful as well. Surprisingly, this car actually is super fast. Coming from, I mean, I've had an R8, I've had an Aston Martin Vantage, the turbocharged one with the AMG engine, and this car is shockingly fast. I know that, you know, you can paper race all day and look at the 0 to 60 figures of, you know, low 4s and 100 to 200 in the 9s, but or high 8s for some testing in the GT4, but that's actually remarkably quick. Granted, you have to rev the snot out of the engine. You got to be in the upper part of the power band to actually get and extract all of that power delivery out of the car, but the car is phenomenally fast. Once you're moving, especially because it's light and it's got immediate response, you get moving really, really quickly. Sorry about the squeak from the ceramics. We're kind of in the high 30s right now. So the fourth thing I like about this car is the transmission. As you know, if you've seen my other videos, I had a 7-speed manual in my 911 Carrera T, and the 911 Carrera T had a 7-speed transmission made into a turbocharged 3-liter flat 6, and immediately once you get in this car, you can tell, because it's naturally aspirated, that the shifts are much smoother. You also notice that you know, when you're shifting, particularly at high RPM, you don't, because you're not losing boost, the shifts are much more seamless. The other thing that's nice about the 6-speed transmission is that the spacing of the gates are more optimal, and it feels much more, it just feels right compared to the 7-speed. I was always trying to figure out what was happening in, you know, between 5, 6, and 7, and there was a weird lockout, but this is absolutely sublime. Clutch pedal is perfect, very light. You can drive it for extended periods without getting tired or it feeling overbearing. And overall, the transmission and the relationship between the transmission and this naturally aspirated engine is phenomenal. The one thing I will say about the transmission that's gotten a lot of criticism from folks is the gear ratios. And a lot of individuals have gone as far as to say that the gear ratios basically ruin the car, because once you get into second gear, the top speed is 85 miles an hour and you can't go that fast. Well, my answer to that is, if you don't want to go fast, don't buy this car. Go buy a Mazda Miata and, you know, stop talking smack. But if you own this car and you plan on driving it fast, the manual transmission is phenomenal. When you are driving extremely spiritedly and you have the pedal depressed all the way to the floor, the less amount of shifts you have to do, the better, in my opinion. Now, if you just want to putz around and go pick up groceries, or, you know, just leisurely drive the car around, yeah, I can understand you can want to shift all the time. But from a performance standpoint, there's really no difference between this car and, let's say, something like a 997 GT3 or something even like a 991.2 GT3, even though it revs higher, the top speeds in those gears are actually nearly identical to the 718 GT4 in Spyder. And so for me, I actually like the long ratios, and I don't know what people are talking about. Another reason why I think the transmission ratios are suited to this car is because it does not have as much traction as a 911. If this car had as much power as a 911 had and shorter ratios, the car would not be able to put any power down on the pavement. It's very lively. I mean, obviously it moves around, it's more progressive, it rotates, and that's part of the allure of this car compared to a 911. But, you know, I think any more power, unless you did other modifications in the car to put all that power down, I don't miss that in this car. And the last thing, obviously, that I love about this car is the fact that it is, you know, my first convertible, and a lot of folks would agree that being able to bring nature into the GT4 is kind of where it's at. Right now it's in the 30s. I'm not dressed for it, and I don't think you would be able to hear anything I had to say if I had the roof down. That said, you can have a conversation in the car. It doesn't get terribly cold. I've had the roof down even in the 30s and 40s, and you know, it's a nice place to be. So now let's get into 5 things that I don't like about this car. The roof sucks. I know that a lot of people say that the roof operation is whatever, 45 seconds, and you'll get used to it. You can't daily this car. Okay, this car is a recreational vehicle. If you want to live with the roof, put it down and it kind of just stays there, great. You don't really give up a lot to a coupe, you know, for 1 minute of your time. But if you have to go into a lot of different places, it's a pain in the ass. The main thing is, you know, it folds in a weird configuration. You gotta clip, you know, the buttresses onto the side, you know, push it all the way down, and then it's really tight and you have to yank it all the way forward. Not for everybody, but for a lot of people. So yeah, the roof operation I can see as a significant downside to this vehicle. For me, I don't drive this every day, so whatever. It looks super gangster with the top down, so it is what it is. Whatever. One of the things that actually bugs me significantly about this car is the sound composer. The sound composer is actually a tube that comes in off the intake manifold, and you know, you can hear that right now. It's really loud. Okay, so I'm hearing a lot of piped in intake manifold sound, and you know, they're trying to cover up a little bit the lack of exhaust sound, which is okay. But if that's not something that you like, you can actually get on the engine bay and disconnect it, and that may or may not happen at some point. Obviously, the third thing I hate is this damn auto start stop. Nothing you can do about it. You can get a T-Design 9 module or whatever, but whatever. Just hit the button. That's not going anywhere. Time for some beans. She goes, folks. Alright, one of the things that I probably like the least about this car, and this is definitely fixable, is that when the roof is down and you can't actually hear what's happening with the sound composer, you can't hear the engine. One of the English reviewers noted this in the past, and those poor guys have the active particulate filters, but because the engine has very dense catalytic converters, you have the matrix for the auto particulate filters, and you've got basically a drone situation happening that they needed to put a lot of baffling in the exhaust system to have drone cancellation under 3,000 RPM. You can't hear anything. The car sounds like a freaking hairdryer. Stay tuned. That is getting fixed in the next video. But something that you know, is a major limitation. It's not that bad in the GT3 apparently from the video, but all the noise you're hearing right now is not exhaust sound. So when you take the roof off, it's like listening to a hair dryer. Because at this price point, having that transmission and a 4-liter engine would be unbelievable. I don't know what the rationale was for not putting it, cost, emissions regulations, whatnot, but that would have made the car for me, honestly, because it's like getting a PDK and a manual at the same time. But, you know, overall, a lot of those are kind of nitpicky, and in my experience, you know, not a big deal. If you're lucky enough to get one of these things, particularly now with inventory being short and lots of COVID delays and things like that, but if you can get your hands on one, even compared to supercars, I would say, you know, go for it. 400 horsepower doesn't seem like a lot. I think it's a little bit sandbagged by Porsche. The thing rips. And you know, manual with which you can get at PDK, by the way, and that PDK is also phenomenal if you know you don't know how to drive stick or you prefer to get all the performance out of the car. But yeah, just a convertible NA, 4 liters, 3 pedals, super analog feeling, bucket seats, etc., etc. Very noisy car. Kind of last of a dying breed. So I hope you enjoyed the video. Please subscribe, hit the notification bell, and give us a thumbs up, and stay tuned for more content. We're definitely putting an exhaust on this guy next week, and enjoy the rest of your day. Alright, bonus. So you know what's better than one 718 Spyder? 2 718 Spyders. Alright, so my buddy Carol came by with his Spyder. We always end up being wiener cousins. But here you got 2 GT Silver ones. This one's got the aftermarket wheels. Can I open your door? Alright, so I'll show you on the inside. He's got the beautiful Heritage interior with some Edgard bucket inserts like how I have. We got a custom 911R shift knob, fire extinguisher. Dude, this is gorgeous. And then in the back we have a little bit of a surprise. We got a full Kline exhaust with headers with 200 cell catalytic converters. We've got a full exhaust rear section, so that replaces the OPFs and has a pretty aggressive muffler. So we're gonna get some startup sounds.